Today I'm testing a brand new film in the worst lighting conditions on a camera I barely trust. Let's get into it. Alright, so I only have one roll of Kentmere 200 shot entirely on the Pentax SPO 145M. It's a fully automated point and shoot, so I can't change the ISO, nor can I push or pull the settings on this camera, so it's going to be an interesting camera to shoot with. I'm stuck shooting it at full midday sun, and my goal is to test this film how it can handle real-life high contrast conditions, cityscapes, people, shade, bright highlights, and share with you my honest first impressions of this film. So for this I set myself 4 mission goals. So first mission is to capture a subject in full hard light, and for this I brought a special subject for today. And it is Bulbasaur. So Bulbasaur is going to be my subject for today. I'm going to place him in different lighting conditions, especially with the green here. I want to see how much Bulbasaur is going to stand out amongst these greens in full harsh daylight. Second objective is finding some mixed light. So placing Bulbasaur in the shadow and with a bright background, and just see how much of a latitude this film really has. Or the opposite around, putting Bulbasaur in broad daylight with a shadowy background. Third mission is to find backlit or side-lit street scenes, so reflective pavement, rim light, and so on. Fourth mission, okay, let's just find another spot where we don't have the lawnmower in the background. Alright, we're on the move. Fourth mission for today is to try to capture a candid portrait or a human element. Let's go find some subject. Okay, bear with me here for a second. I'm gonna explain in the next couple of minutes why some of these shots are double exposed. Let's just say it was not intentional that they are double exposed. Okay, so originally I didn't want to shoot it with the Pentax SPO 145, but rather I wanted to shoot it with the Canonet QL17 that I have. So I'm going to show you with this camera here. But unfortunately this camera has a malfunction. The shutter plates were sticking together, and I only realized it after frame 6 that there's a big shutter lag. So when I pressed the shutter button, it took around 2 seconds to release the shutter. I might have to bring it in service or do it myself, but yes, that's why if you see the images, the first couple of frames were shot on the Canonet and double exposed with the SPO 145. As soon as I realized that this has a shutter problem, I rewind the film back into the canister and put it into this one. But unfortunately, I only have one roll of Kentmere 200, so that's why you're going to see double exposures, but that's going to make for a fun test. Onward and continue with our missions. We found the first test. It's bright daylight here, and the background is also well lit. Gonna see, we're gonna close in, zoom into Bulbasaur, make it portrait orientation. And one king with wide angle. Alright. So that's the first picture with Bulbasaur on a bright bench with a bright background, and we're gonna see how the film handles that. So let's find a space where I can hide Bulbasaur, and hopefully you guys find him within the black and white image.
Hold on, I totally forgot to record and hide Bulbasaur, but don't worry, I will hide him a little bit later in the video. So I couldn't finish the video in one go, and I went out the next day to finish the video, but I didn't want to go to the same place, so I thought rather than going to the old Botanical Garden, let's show you the Botanical Garden here in Zurich.
So we're going around, taking some pictures. I got my subject with me. And after we finish this roll, we're going back to my office and develop and scan the images and then give my first impressions of the roll of Kentmere 200. Let's get started.
So I developed the film in a black and white solution from RC Imago for around 9 minutes and scanned with my mirrorless setup with Smart Convert, and that's the whole process of me developing and scanning the black and white images. Alright, now we're back in the office. So now that I had some time looking over the images, so for me it looks like Kentmere 200 has a much higher contrast than Kentmere 400. It has way more punch and the blacks are more pronounced. And it's especially interesting if we look at some of the images where you have bright highlight spots like these ones from the river. You see that the highlights has a glow on it, and from the quick Google search I did, Kentmere 200 doesn't have an anti-halation layer, which would explain these highlights. Also, if you're going to the image on the lamppost, if you look closely at the highlights, it's really blooming. I didn't have a blooming filter or anything else on the SPO 145, so this was all the film. Also, I'm pleasantly surprised how much this film handles double exposure, since I exposed the roll on the Canonet with box speeds and I couldn't change any settings on the Pentax SPO. It's good to see how much light this film can take. Especially in this image here, there's a tiny slit where you can see where the image is exposed once, and you can still see some of the highlights from when I first first exposed the film, and I'm still impressed how much detail I could recover from this image. Otherwise, this image here, which is really blurry, it has to do with the flash function of the SPO. It doesn't have a dedicated flash turn off button, but rather if you cycle through the settings of flash, you go into night mode, and of course with the longer shutter speeds it starts to introduce some camera shake. Here is an image of Bulbasaur against a bright white wall. You can really see it on the video, but the sun was shining on this white wall, and when I looked through the viewfinder, the white wall was blinding and any details on the white wall. But if you look here closer, and you can still see some details in the background. Here's another shot of Bulbasaur in the shadow with a bright background. So the botanical garden was fully in the sun, and I stood in the shadow, put Bulbasaur on my coffee mug and took a picture, tried to expose for Bulbasaur. And of course, because he's the main subject, the SPO did a really good job of exposing Bulbasaur. And I think in this case it was a little bit more extreme. There's still some details left in the bright background, but you can really see the limitations of the film. So especially if you zoom into the grass, you barely can make out any details there, and also at the edges of the dome almost every information is gone. With this image here indoors with the greens and all that, I thought Bulbasaur would blend in a little bit more, but of course I didn't want to put him on the plants, put him on the ground. But yes, these are my first impressions of the film. So far I'm really impressed how Kentmere 200 handles the roll-off in the highlights and how much detail it still retains on very sunny days, and I can't wait to test this film in 120. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next video about Kentmere 200. Otherwise, if you have any questions or any suggestions, put them down in the comments below, and as always, every like helps this channel, and I see you guys in the next video.